is joining us this evening by telephone. First, we'd like to start with a great presentation. Dr. Dorner, you're going to lead us with that.
President Lucero, members of the board, and community on the live stream, we hope you can hear us well this week. We thank our IT department for giving microphones to each board member and those of us who are speaking. I would like to invite to the front of the room friends of ours for the last 18 years, President and CEO of Mission Bank, Daryl Lauderett, and Deborah Catt. This amazing organization, Mission Bank, has had, as you know, because you see us every year, just have you stand here, school drives. And you know, this year with virtual school openings and the pandemic and lockdowns, we are so happy that they chose to continue the school needs drive, and they delivered to our facility dozens of boxes of pre-prepared school supplies for the Kingman Unified School District students, and I know you do this for our partner school district as well. And so for 18 years we've been able to count on you to help our kids have the supplies they need in class. So we'd like to present you with this. This one can go on your desk instead of your wall, a little different. In appreciation of your support and the continued support for 18 years, we applaud you, Mission Bank. And do you have your... Shelly's going to take a picture.
Oh, good.
Yep. We're not shaking hands this year, but all the love is in the room still. Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And on behalf of the board members and the students, we look forward to next year.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mission Bank.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully next year will be different. Thank you
Right. Thank you
for having us this evening and for this great award. It was our pleasure,
Oh,
as
yes.
always.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Young, can you hear okay?
I can, yes.
Okay. We are going to move to call the audience. We do have one request this evening. We have Christine Olson Sudam. Did I pronounce that correctly? Oh, Sidam. Sorry about that. And she wants to discuss with the board face masking children in schools.
Superintendent.
Will she hear herself or does she just speak?
Can you hear me?
I think you're good.
Okay. Superintendent, members of the board, the children of Kingman, Arizona have no voice. They need an advocate, particularly now in 2020 when the face mask of oppression is strapped to their innocent little faces. This mask is the ball and chain enslaving adults everywhere, and we're compelled to mask up for safety as we go about our daily lives. It's debilitating and demoralizing for adults, but worse, far worse, is what it does to our children. I cringe every time I see a little masked up face peering out of a school bus window. When I see a mother masking her child at the bus stop, or I see children coming out of classes fully muzzled, or I hear of a teacher admonishing a student for lowering his mask in the classroom, I'm at once saddened and then outraged. Masking children is state-sanctioned child abuse. You're destroying our babies' lives and crippling their development. When did this ever become an acceptable method of fighting a virus? This is a virus with an extremely low infectious and morbidity rate for healthy children. Who are you protecting? Certainly not these little ones. Your excuse is, of course, the governor's mandate. It's not the law, okay? It's a mandate. He decreed, you dutifully comply. And let's not forget, new cases being reported, a sudden uptick, you're off and running. Parents know when their child is too sick to attend school. We don't want or need the nanny state dictating our behavior. Who among you has the courage to say no to this demoralizing practice? Who can look at a child's red, rashy face and justify this hideous ritual? What kind of psychological damage is being done? Who among you has trouble sleeping at night? I know I do. I mean, after a day of marshaling children into the submission of the mask, I'm ashamed of what's happening in our schools. I don't want to hear any more excuses. You need to stop this unconstitutional, illegal, dangerous, abusive practice. Our children are helpless, and they're looking to us for love and release from the bondage of forced face masking. If you have any humanity left, you'll put an end to this before it's too late. That's all I have.
Thank you for addressing the board this evening. Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? We'll move on to item 6 of our reports, and our first report will be from Dr. Dorner.
Dr. Lucero, members of the board. I'm just going to give a brief report. As I've promised, I will keep everybody updated on what's happening in the district. I would like to start, though, with great pride and offer accolades to KUSD staff members, students, and families for working together to face the continued challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic and those issues that have been caused in our community, nation, and world. We're all in this together, as we continue to say. When we brought students back to campus on September 8th for an AB schedule, district and school teams were ready to implement our return to learn plan. There were hiccups, we addressed them, we identified them and addressed them. As we continue to do daily. We worked diligently to screen staff and students daily, distance as much as possible, disinfect procedurally, wear masks, avoid cross-contaminating surfaces as much as possible. We held each other accountable by having crucial conversations when necessary. We continue to do that to this day. We all agreed in quick order when the AB schedule was launched that having students on campus was a much more successful model than the virtual model. Our success in those first few weeks increased the confidence most staff members have to bring the kids back after fall break. We still have concerns. We continue to talk about them and address them regularly. We have had all students on campus since October 19th. As far as COVID positive cases in the district, during the last 2 weeks of the AB schedule, we experienced 2 positive cases, neither which originated in the school setting, and I do believe I talked about those at the last board meeting. There were no additional positive cases over the next couple of weeks that stemmed from those. On November 2nd, a high school student was identified as positive, followed by an elementary student on November 3rd. They were unrelated. Both cases originated in the home. And I say this because I have extensive conversations with the health department daily. November 4th, a family of 3 students tested positive. They were siblings in a home. This week there's been one positive case in an elementary campus. So in total, since September 8th, there have been 8 confirmed positive cases on KUSD campuses across 5 campuses. None of them originated at school, and to date, none have resulted in a second confirmed positive associated with that school contact. And again, we're watching them daily. No teachers have been confirmed positive. 2 support staff have been confirmed positive, neither of which originated on campus. Many teachers and support staff have elected to be tested. We have a really good system where if any teacher or any support staff feels like they may have had an exposure or they feel like they want to get tested, they either go through MCC or KRMC Cares or one of the testing sites. We allow that. They are paid while they go to get tested, and they're awaiting results. None of them have come back positive other than the 2 that I talked about with support staff, and they had tested on their own. So this indicates to me that many of our staff members, student, and family efforts are working. It is no secret that it is an all-day, everyday monitoring process. We cannot take our eye off of this for one moment. We are constantly talking about following our procedures, keeping our procedures. I have to say, I'm very happy with our families reporting. When we last spoke, we talked about, we originally thought the health department would call us, remember? And then we found out that families would have to self-report, and that process would kind of have to meet in the middle. In all of these cases, the families have self-reported. At the same time, I call the health department, and we have a match. And so, to me, that is really good news. Our families at KUSD are taking this very seriously. And again, for that, we're very grateful on behalf of the staff that when they're self-assessing symptoms at home, they're staying home. They're staying home for 2 weeks if there's a positive in the house, or they feel like they had a close contact in a family or a community event. And there's been a lot of communication. So those are all the positives. It is difficult, like I said, to every day come to work, I'm sure at the schools, in the classrooms, and in our offices, and wonder what is today going to bring. But I think continued diligence and commitment to our procedures is really making a difference. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to have the kids on campus. We are monitoring it, like I said, not only by the day, but literally by the hour. I am in contact with either the health department or principals or families all day, every day. We're checking attendance. You know, we've had our screening in the morning. We've had three kids that have had fevers trying to come into school. They're not doing anything wrong. We just happen to catch fevers at the door. We send them home. The parents are not arguing with us. They'll either get them tested or they'll wait to see if the symptoms evolve. They're following the process. And then we also go in and check the attendance daily to make sure they didn't just casually slip back into school the next day. Because in the very early stages, we had a couple of instances where kiddos went home sick and they felt better the next day and came back. So we've really had to work to get the process of 72 hours fever-free, or they've been tested and it's negative. All those pieces are starting to really become a system and work. So, and I did post the community letter that I shared with the board and with all of KUSD staff. Every Thursday I give an update. Those of you that have the KUSD email see that. I started adding yours since it's separate. And so that's where we are as far as our return to learn process and procedures. It's tough. It's tough, but our kids are in school and they are learning, and our teachers are doing an incredible job working to close the gap. And I was really thrilled that there was only one positive this week. So that's my report, and we can discuss it later, and you can ask questions during item, I think it's 21 or 22.
Yes, Dr. Dorner. Mrs. Weiser, you have a report this evening?
Just briefly, I just wanted to report back on the ASBA political agenda that we had the delegate assembly approved the agenda pretty much the way it was. And if you didn't notice, there was also a fifth item, the COVID response, which we also was put into the agenda, mainly making that schools are getting financial assistance that goes along with being able to be held harmless for any liability, because it's not our, this is an act of God sort of thing. And making sure we have technology and all of that to deal with this. And I can give copies of, it's also on the ASBA page under the political agenda. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Weiser. And also, I'd like to say that we're excited that you'll be giving us reports for 4 more years. Right? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Shumway has a report, Save Our Schools presentation.
Okay, it's on. Okay. So Save Our Schools reached out and they provided a presentation. Save Our Schools Arizona is a grassroots, nonprofit, nonpartisan, community-based organization fighting for strong public schools for a strong Arizona. Their mission is empower parents, teachers, and citizens to advocate for strong public schools in every community, advocate for responsible education policy that keeps public dollars in public schools, and ensure transparency and accountability of taxpayer funds, as well as collaborate with other education and community advocacy groups to achieve full funding for public schools. So during the presentation, these are some highlights. Arizona's per pupil funding is $3,300. We are the second most crowded schools in the country. Our median teacher salary is 49th in the nation, and that is after Ducey's 20 by 20. Education funding has been cut by 23.3% since 2008. Arizona has the highest teacher turnover in the country. Administration pay is the 3rd lowest in the nation. So it was a great meeting with good information. To date, 300 million tax dollars have been diverted from public schools to private schools in Arizona, and outside of Arizona, believe it or not, but Arizona tax dollars, for tax vouchers and ESAs. You wouldn't think that Kingman would be affected by this because we don't have that many private schools here, but Kingman has lost $127,000 tax dollars that were diverted to private schools using ESAs. The passing of 208, yay, is going to be a game changer for Arizona. With better funding comes better teachers, good teachers staying, and we will begin to attract companies that may have avoided bringing their companies here because our education system wouldn't, one, support their workforce needs, two, a highly skilled workforce wouldn't want to move to Arizona to work because our education reputation. When we support education, we support economic growth. That was the presentation.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions for Ms. Shumway?
I'll get with you later for some of the more of those numbers. Thanks.
Item 7, approval of consent agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. I think it's on already. The green light's on. Who's got the call?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ricca. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Are you there, Carol?
I you lost me.
Oh, sorry about that. We just passed,
That's okay.
the consent agenda.
Okay, great.
So we are on item number 8. Books to be on display for the required 60 days beginning today.
Mr. President, members of the board, these books are on display for public and staff input for the next 60 days.
Any questions for Ms. Woolsey? No questions. Item 9, approved Dawn Day as a qualified evaluator for 2021 school year.
Right, Mr. President, members of the board, Dawn Day was added as an administrator at Kingman Middle School. She was not on the original list, so this is a housekeeping approval item so that she can help evaluate teachers.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Weiser,
A second.
second by Ms. Young. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 10, Angela, is the employee present? Employee's not present, so we will move from item 10 unless anyone wants to go into executive session. Seeing none, we'll move to item 12, which is move to terminate the employment of Judy Nealon Ashley for reasons stated in the confidential memo to the governing board.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ricca. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And Angela, is Ms. McGovern present this evening? No, not present. So if no board members would like to move into executive session, we can move to item 15, which is move to terminate the employment of Maureen McGovern for reasons stated in the confidential memo to the governing board. There's no, okay. Do we have a motion to approve? I will make a motion to approve item 15. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving item number 15, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Is that correct? 5-0. Motion passes 5-0. Item 16, approve Frontline Placement Technologies, Inc. to continue as a sole source vendor for absence management, formerly AESOP reporting software.
Mr. President, members of the board, Frontline has been in our district for over a decade. We use that for call-offs, tracking absences, and whatnot, as stated in the memo. I'm asking for a sole source declaration on this vendor. We spend about $18,500 a year. We did a couple years ago look for a new vendor, and the implementation of that kind of fell flat, and so we're sticking with Frontline for the time being, or we ask that we can.
Any questions for Mr. Sherman or motion? Ms. Weiser?
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve item 16.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 17, approve Media Net Solutions, Inc. to continue as sole source vendor for E-IEP Pro for special education plan creation, documentation, and reporting.
Mr. President, members of the board, unlike Frontline, we have not sought a new vendor with IEP Pro. The special education department relies on this program, and trying to change it at this point could be detrimental. So we have not sought to look for a new vendor there. We spend about $15,000 a year, and we ask for sole source declaration again for this year.
Ms.
I'll
Weiser?
make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Ricca,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Weiser. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 18, approval of People Admin Inc. to continue as sole source vendor for talent management software.
Mr. President, members of the board, People Admin, over the last several years, we've really gotten to kind of take that out onto the highway, really get the most out of that program. We'd like to continue doing that, as that's where some evaluations are, that's where our onboarding takes place, and it streamlines with our accounting software as well as our absence software. So we spend about $30,000 a year, and we ask that we can do that again this year. You just stop me if I'm going too fast.
You're doing fine.
Make the motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Weiser. Second,
Second.
second by Ms. Young. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 19, approve Tyler Technologies, Inc. to continue as sole source vendor for Visions and Infinite Visions package.
Mr. President, members of the board, Visions and Tyler Tech, that is our entire accounting software. That's where we make purchases. That's where we process payroll. That's where the sites are able to put in POs. It's integral to the operations of the district, and I'm not trying to give that one up. So that's $82,000 a year, about roughly what we spend, and it's important to keep that going in our district.
I will make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Ricca,
I'll second.
second by Mrs. Weiser. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 20, discuss Mojave County Court settlement with Transwestern Pipeline and its immediate and long-term impact on KUSD number 20.
Mr. President, members of the board, I bring this as discussion only. In 2016, Transwestern sued multiple counties that the pipeline goes through. They were suing related to the valuation of their pipeline itself. Ultimately, they've won that. They won the settlement, and the courts agreed that the valuation was too high, and so as a result, the counties that received those taxpayer payments from them since 2016 have to pay back a portion of it. And it also means that moving forward, we'll see less taxes from Transwestern as well. Now, there is a push down in Yavapai County to push for legislation to potentially hold districts harmless for this issue. And so, whereas the county is about ready to make their payment and our district is ready to make its payment, we don't need to go out for a loan. Our lawyers have recommended that we hold off, not make our payment yet, see what happens with Yavapai, because if we do make a payment, getting that back could take years, but if there is legislation, we could avoid this $600,000 payment. So if that's an opportunity, that's what we're looking at right now. We're in discussions with the county, in discussions with the lawyer, and so everybody is aware and okay with where we are in the process. And I just wanted to keep you guys informed, because when we do have to pay, that hit will be over $600,000 for the back taxes, and then it'll cut off a good portion, a small portion of our taxes moving forward. Because I guess the pipeline doesn't affect as much of our county as it does others. So that's kind of how that hits you moving forward.
And how long is that? It just says 20 for 2020 and subsequent years. How long did you say the payments are for?
Oh, so the payments, when I say 2020, that's essentially pay that $600,000. Then subsequent years are the hit to our taxes that we won't get moving forward.
I see,
Yeah.
okay.
But this is from 2016 through.
Yeah, it's every tax year from 2016 to now is what we have to pay back on.
And the interest is adding up on that?
The $600,000 includes the interest. Our lawyer said you at worst case scenario, you pay some more interest. Best case scenario, you get out of the $600,000 payment. So our discussions around that were saying their interest is worth the risk if we can get out from underneath this $500,000.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Sherman? Thank you, Aaron.
Can I say one thing
Yes.
just to be clear? There will come a point, whether there's legislation or not, that the court will say, make your payment. And at that point, the county will dip into our account and take that money out. So we'll have to be prepared for that as we get closer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 21, information and discussion and possible action on the most recent COVID data and return to learn strategies.
Mr. President, members of the board, this will be on every agenda for the foreseeable future so that we always have the opportunity to discuss the instructional model in place at Kingman Unified School District. I do appreciate in the last board meeting that you gave me the opportunity to make a decision in an emergency situation or schedule an emergency board meeting on a Friday after the Thursday data. So thank you. That did give a little, I don't know, it gave a little relief to the worry of waiting month to month, so thank you for that. So again, it is on the agenda. Where we stand in talking with the administrators multiple times over the last couple of weeks and watching the data and tracking our cases and talking to the health department. Of course, we are prepared. I sent the community letter and I told our entire staff to be prepared for an AB at any time. I did let them know the 16th would be the soonest, but that we would check on it every week. My opinion is if we can safely be in school with our staff and our students and our procedures are working, the more days we have with our kids in school, the better. But we are prepared for whatever needs to happen. So we'll turn it to you for discussion.
Any discussion, or do you have questions for Dr.
I'll make
Dornier?
a comment. I was at dinner last week and a family stopped me and thanked me for voting to bring the kids back to school. And just one little item.
I don't know how relevant, but it's just that my mom goes to Colton B sometimes.
If you could talk into the mic so people can hear. Thanks, Beth.
And apparently somebody there in, at that organization in this community has just tested positive on Monday. And they're usually more elderly. Just that we're gonna get hit. It's coming. But, and I appreciate totally that you are ready and everybody that's been working with this so hands-on. Obviously, this is a big relief to everybody that you're all working so hard making sure that this is working correctly.
And I will say, Governor Ducey, at 5, I think it was 5 o'clock, had a public address, and so Jerry thankfully received an email, and we obviously popped it on, because he hasn't spoken about it in quite some time, right? So we didn't know what he was going to say at 5 o'clock, but it was basically a public reminder that now is not the time to let our guard down in any way, shape, or form, because there are cases, we are seeing an increase. The Arizona dashboard that I share the screenshot of with all of you and the staff every week, it does have some latency in it. And so I do remind staff, they will email me and say, the data's old. Well, that's the AZDHS data. That's the one that we're tracking. We do look at, I look at the Mojave County site. I look at the Mojave County tweets. I look at a site that's national that follows Mojave County. And try to look at all of it. I will say, and it's tough. I say this every time. None of us want to be in this position, and I hate that you guys feel like, and I feel like we're in the position of this decision making that so affects our community. But where we can see some good news is, even with those increasing numbers, it's not correlating to the schools, but we are cognizant that it's happening.
And I appreciate how you're keeping the community informed and the little, is it lights or something you have
When you
on
go to
there?
the homepage of the website, yeah.
Is that information on our other social media sites or only the website? Just that little
The pop-up
light?
blocker is only on our website with the green, the yellow, the red, and then you touch it
Yeah.
and you can go see. That's not on the social media, no.
Okay.
I don't think it is. Okay.
And I think that would be a good thing if it was on there also, just because I think a lot of families look at that, and I don't know if that's on Facebook or something, they can click on a link and then go to that takes them to our website.
Mhm.
Could also maybe change the logo color if it's on Facebook. Have it be in green or yellow, whatever.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think we're doing a great job keeping the community updated and informed on what's going on, which is very helpful.
Gretchen, I have a question. So what is the criteria that it moves from green to yellow?
For our
For our
district,
little light, yeah.
what we decide as a board and as a district administration,
And yellow means
AB.
AB. So we're on green.
All the kids are in school right now.
So what is the criteria for this board to decide that we go back to AB?
You look at all of the data and what's going on and make an informed decision.
Okay.
I thought when when the numbers go in the green, or in the yellow, go from green to yellow.
So one criteria goes to yellow? Is that our benchmark?
No, what we've been doing all along, Board Member Shumway, is looking at the recommendations and the overall criteria. We've been looking at the Kingman community, how it's affecting us. We've talked about making it data related. That's why I gave you data in the board report so we can see. And it does, even the AZDHS has changed their criteria a bit. It was one red area and you need to go virtual. Now the recommendation is that you're in red in all 3 areas before you go virtual, because they're also recognizing the value of having kids in school.
And what was our recommendation for when we go AB? 1?
To look at the data and have a recommendation that I've talked to the health department about this regularly, and we've talked about it as a group here, to look at the data and decide as a group, are we in the place where in the Kingman community we feel it's best to go AB?
So that's what we're doing tonight, correct?
Correct.
So this board meeting, we're deciding if, based on the data, if we should go AB, correct?
Or,
And then,
or
what-
continue what we're doing, yes.
What is the criteria for you to call an emergency meeting on a Friday? What are you looking at to say, okay, that's it, we need an emergency meeting post Thursday data release?
I'm looking at the data that the AZDHS is posting on Thursdays to see if there's a significant change in the data they're posting. And it has been fairly steady with minor ups and downs over the last month.
And what is the criteria that we're like, okay, that's it?
If we were to have seen this last Thursday when I pulled it up, suddenly us jump above that red mark, I would have had you in on Friday.
The red mark or the yellow dotted line?
The yellow dotted line would go above it
Okay,
into the red.
okay.
If I can, and I would think that you're also just,
And then there
you're
would be no
looking
choice to me.
every day at our school data
Mhm.
and cases.
So how many students do we currently have in quarantine? They're not allowed to come to class because they've been exposed.
There's a group at one of the high school, one of the high schools is finishing a group. The other high school has a group associated with one student. There's a group at Kingman Middle School and 2 small groups at 2 elementaries. But I'm not going to give you a hard number. I would have to go and look.
So
I would
how
say
are we,
about 20 at the middle school, around 10 at the elementary, and then the high schools is a little larger because they go through multiple classes.
so we're looking at plus or minus
At the high school
50?
level, 50.
at the high school level? So those students are quarantined for 2 weeks, correct?
Yes.
How are we providing instruction to those students?
They're working with their teachers to get their assignments and have the work to complete.
So worksheets.
A variety of things, yes. Some of the teachers have some digital or virtual. Others have the same work or worksheets they're doing in the classroom.
So we don't really have, because if this blows up,
Mhm.
which we're trending there, we don't really have a way to provide instruction. We have a way to provide work. We don't really have a way to provide instruction.
The same thing as if we're on the AB or the virtual, yes.
But they're not
When the
allowed to
kids-
come on a Monday or Wednesday or Tuesday, Thursday.
When the kids are in, at home, it's the same idea, yes.
But they're 2 weeks without instruction at least.
Without direct instruction, yes.
Yes. Okay, well, that's instruction. So I would like to see some way of, when we have to tell students to quarantine, that we have a way of getting quality, structured instruction to those students. Because we know we're asking them to quarantine, right? That's not their choice.
Correct.
So we should be providing actual instruction. I don't know if Calvert's an option to throw them in there for a couple weeks, or if we keep a Zoom, if we have someone from the high school that can do, some Zoom meetings with our quarantine kids, or Zoom meetings with our quarantine little ones, some way of reaching out to them. But I don't think sending them home with worksheets for 2 weeks is adequate. We wouldn't think it's adequate any other time, so. Correct?
Thank you.
So the other question I have is, we are only requesting that people are testing if they're exposed, like actual exposed?
We cannot make somebody get a test, an adult or a student.
We cannot make someone get a test.
No, you cannot make someone get a test.
So, but we can make them quarantine.
The health department can ask them to be away if they've been in close contact, yes.
So are we quarantining teachers that have been exposed?
Teachers who are essential workers, according to the health department, can do one of 2 things. They can quarantine for the 2 weeks, or they can choose to get tested and have a negative test and come back and monitor symptoms.
So according to the CDC, it can take up to at least 7 days to get even test positive, even if they were exposed
Yes.
and have
Up to 14
virus.
days is the incubation period.
So if they get exposed on a Tuesday, they get tested Tuesday night, they might have a negative test. That doesn't mean they're negative.
Exactly, which is why they're asked to monitor symptoms, keep a distance, wear the masks, and follow other essential worker CDC recommended guidelines.
But our students have to quarantine.
Yes.
If you think about it, if you have a high school teacher that has come into contact for 15 minutes, close contact, whatever, how many students do they see in a day? 120? 150?
We've asked our teachers, board members, some way to be very cognizant of distance and not be within 15 minutes. Is it an imperfect process? Probably, because you've been a teacher and I've been a teacher, and we know that teachers move around the room and they work with students. But we are following the conversations that I'm having with the health department on a regular basis, and it isn't always fair. For example, if I'm a student in a classroom and I am positive, I've tested positive, I can return to school after 10 days. But anybody I was in close contact with is 14 days, because they're assuming, the health experts, that the positive person is 4 or 5 days into the incubation period, but a person who might have been in close contact past 14 days then for that incubation period. There's a lot of dynamics going on. It isn't fun. It isn't fair. Anywhere, not just Kingman Unified. This pandemic is horrific. But I feel like our system, we are following the health department's recommendations. We're paying attention to the CDC guidelines. We're doing our best. We always take recommendations like the excellent, conversation you just had with us a few minutes ago to keep kids learning, to keep staff safe, and anybody that wants to have a conversation or ask questions at any time, we welcome it.
So, we just had a member of the public take off her mask and speak, and yet we did not enforce our own policy. Thoughts?
Well, she asked me. She was 6 feet away from all of us. So she wore her mask in. She was wearing it. She actually asked me ahead of time if she could take it off while she spoke. We make sure that is 6 feet from everybody, which is why we allowed her to do that, so that you could hear her.
I think that when we start making exceptions is when we get into trouble.
That's not an exception. She was 6 feet away. She was socially distanced, in my opinion.
I disagree. I think that we should
can
be wearing,
disagree.
wearing masks in public settings, period. And we ask that of everyone. I mean, we are not saying, okay, we're going to set chairs 6 feet apart, so everyone feel free to take off your mask. We didn't say that. So
No,
then
but
we
if
start
Sorry, I didn't-
negotiating, right?
No, we're not negotiating. If you look at the CDC recommendations, it says wear masks when feasible and when social distancing isn't possible. And
I
for
also
people
think
who
we should
can wear
follow our own guidelines to say masks are
it.
required, and they should have been.
Okay.
I just see these little things happening in the school. I mean, I know that we're doing our best, but I just see these little things here, a little thing here and there. What is, what's gonna be the pinnacle moment is when we have a student or a teacher get sick because of a student or a teacher, correct? Because they were exposed at school?
You'll have to repeat that. I did not hear you.
So the big moment that we're all kind of waiting for is when a student or teacher gets sick from a student or teacher that they were exposed to at school, correct?
No, I don't agree with you at all. We're not waiting for a big moment to make a decision.
Okay, so I asked about the criteria of what we need to do when we get to AB. When we go back to AB, our numbers are rising. KRMC is about to put up their COVID test again, or their little tent outside. They're about to put that back up. So I'm just wondering what our moment is.
Are you speaking to me or your fellow board members?
Yeah, well, yeah, our fellow board members.
Well, I think we continue to have those discussions. I think that we rely on Dr. Dorner being in the schools and getting data every day from schools if we have positive cases or not. Doing the quarantine is recommended by the health department. I think that right now, the alternative of not having kids in school is far worse than what we were doing now, and trying to follow the best protocols that we can follow. And so far, I would say it's been very successful versus the alternative.
I agree. I think it's working. Obviously,
And I
we
think
haven't had.
it's a day by day. It's a fluid process. There are no right or wrong answers, but I think the right answer right now is those kids need to be in the classroom and being taught as long as we can.
Okay, as long as we can. What I'm trying to get down to is, what is that point?
I don't
that we
think there
can't?
is a point, Jen. I don't think there's a number that you can look at. I think you've got to look at all the criteria.
So
and
based
make it-
on
and
all
make-
the
and
criteria.
make the best decision that you can make.
And we're ready for Monday, should Monday be the day. If the cases continue to rise this week, if we look at Thursday and we see what we possibly anticipate, then I will let you know that, and the community, as we've prepared them, and the teachers, that we're prepared for Monday. But if things don't escalate, I like to think that we could have the opportunity to keep kids in school and learning. That's what I'm saying.
Well, AB is still keeping kids in school and learning. Okay, so it's not gonna be a day-by-day thing, it'll be a week-by-week thing, because
Yes.
you're checking the Arizona Department of Health website, which is updated weekly, correct?
Right, that's an official weekly check, but I'm looking at numbers and talking to the health department daily.
Mhm.
Okay, and so we'll just expect that if you hear something like, what?
Like last week when I emailed you several times and gave you real-time updates on what was going on and said, be ready, that's what I'll continue to do.
Okay, so at what point is this board saying, okay, be ready? Because I know the superintendent, are we just waiting for the superintendent to pull the string, or are we, as a board, ready to look at our own data and make those decisions?
I think we gave that approval to Dr. Dorner last meeting.
As an emergency, yes.
And I have to say, I've got to commend staff and students and parents and Dr. Dorner for the job that they've been doing. They've been very diligent. Dr. Dorner has done a wonderful job in monitoring this data. She's done a wonderful job sending us emails, keeping us on board with what's happening. I'm not a micromanager, and I trust that she's going to do her job in the best interest of the kids, the teachers, and her staff.
I agree. I think she's done amazing, but I think we need to take responsibility as a board and not just rely on one person. I mean, I personally am monitoring as well. I don't have daily contacts with the health department. I would love, maybe at the next board meeting, to have Denise Burley here to have that conversation about what the criteria is, what is she looking for, how is contract tracing happening within the schools, how is that communication taking place. I think that would make the board feel a little better relying on that information.
I agree.
I would say the data is different every day. There's so many variables.
Yeah, like,
Mm-hmm. And you know, Dr. Dorner has done a wonderful job keeping us informed. At any time we have a question, we can contact her. And if we're concerned that we need to make a change, we can call an emergency board meeting right then.
well, within 24 hours. But yes, I agree. I think that, I'm just surprised that we haven't had a worse situation with students getting it from each other. So that speaks to our procedures and following them, and everybody being very diligent about being safe. But I just imagine there's a time that the other shoe's gonna drop, and I just wanna make sure we're prepared
And ahead
and we're
of
not late to the game.
it. And ahead of it. I agree on that.
I have to agree with Dr. Dorner and Dr. Lucero. The best option right now, we're following the rules, we're doing everything we can, there's not a huge outbreak. The best place for those kids is right in school every single day right now.
And it could change. I thank you, Carol, I appreciate that. And I think our staff has to be ready that it could change quickly.
Ms. Weiser has been waiting to speak. Sorry, were you done?
No, I'm done.
So I appreciate you bringing up the questions, because we haven't discussed this side of it, other than we all knew that there would be levers that would trip, that we would have to go into this AB, and that's why we unanimously gave you that emergency control. I just wanted to express that what I'm thinking about is that when these numbers on these charts, the positivity, the hospital visits, go into the yellow, that would be a trigger to me.
The red. Leave the
Yellow for AB. I mean, right now, we already have the cases per 100,000 in yellow. These would be items that I would look at as a trigger for AB. But, or, you know, barring that we don't have an outbreak. An outbreak is when I would be on, also on whether these are still green or not, considering, well, are we gonna look at one school maybe going AB or something like that, you
We
know?
can look at grade spans. That's something, I believe I put in the email last week. It's very minimal at the elementary. They can self-contained, they have smaller class sizes, they can really control the interaction much more easily than at a high school. If we were to divide by grade span, I think a high school would be the first one to go AB because of the movement. And that's where the pending cases are, and pending meaning there's more self-quarantines, and as Jen mentioned earlier, you have to quarantine more. Yeah, so that is a possibility.
So that right there, you just said yellow, AB, you just said red, that ambiguity, that not meeting in the middle, that's what I imagine this conversation is for.
Yes.
So we can provide clear guidance as to what levers, I like your analogy, have to be tripped for us to hit this and hit this. I imagine if there's an outbreak, it's not an AB situation, it's a virtual situation.
You know, we all thought that too, Jen, and the term you used, ambiguous, is what we've really faced the entire time. I have started asking people to join me in some speaker conversations for another set of ears, because it has evolved and changed, like I said, from when we first established it last summer. That was the impression we were under, that if there's an outbreak, you close the school. But that's not necessarily the case. They're quarantining groups of kids for outbreaks if they're seeing, but if it's large enough, it could be a whole school and then others are open, or it could just be a portion of the school.
Well, if we don't have a plan to provide direct instruction in some fashion to
Right.
a significant number, a population of a school, then we need to think about virtual in that case. But if we get it together and we say, okay, we might have significant portions of students quarantining, being out of school for 2 weeks, and we have a plan for that, we have a way to provide them direct instruction, I could see an outbreak being a cluster approach.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't have that, then we need to get back to that pre-planned and scheduled instruction.
Right.
of
So
virtual.
if a teacher and his or her entire class or the entire grade level, then they would transition to the virtual. The teacher would have all of his or her kids virtually, and they would have that meaningful direct instruction. I think the point you mentioned earlier, which is a very good point and a difficult one to navigate, is when pieces of the whole, part of a class, so the teacher, because we really are trying to be mindful of the workload for our teachers, and I mean that, I mean, you know you're a teacher. Do not want to ask them to try to do instruction with, like, the full day of instruction with a group that's here or a group that's online and a group that's in front of them. That's one thing that we really want to avoid, so we don't have teacher overload and burnout. We don't want to do that. So we do need a system where teachers can have their group, if you will, in whatever version it is, and they're not trying to do multiple modalities at once. I agree with you on that.
And I've had parents take students out for 2 weeks vacation in the middle of the school year and trying to come up with work to give them for the car ride or for the plane ride, and it comes back not done, right? So you are then, well, I was spending my lunches catching that student up. Now I imagine you have 18 students that had no structure, was just given worksheets or work to do, and they had no instruction. So
Right.
I think we need to have a plan for our quarantine students, a more structured plan.
I agree. And we also need to somehow, and I'll say it to the camera for any families that are watching, if and when we do go back to AB, we do have 2 days of meaningful instruction, but teachers are having to do exactly what you're describing. They're putting a lot of time and energy on that AB schedule into having that instruction with the expectation, you know, the I do and the we do when we have them for those few hours, and the you do when you go home, and it is not happening. When they're at home, they're off. And I'm speaking generally. We do have some very dedicated kids and families who are doing a great job. So if they're listening and they, hey, we're doing it, yes, we have that. But I would say the majority, teachers are really in that AB or the chasing. So we're always at the drawing board working with the administrators on everything. Attendance, taking attendance during an AB or a virtual really bogs down. I have a couple teachers here. I don't know if you want to nod or agree, but all of these things add to your workload, do they not? It's tough. So you're right. We have to continue to find ways to support teachers and keep instruction going and not exclude any students from a meaningful learning experience. And I took notes on your comments about the quarantine kids, and we'll take that and talk about it tomorrow first thing.
Ms. Weiser?
I just wanted to ask, the Return to Learn guide, obviously I don't have it memorized. Doesn't it have some specifics on when we would go back to AB or that you had found that you were able to put in there?
No, it has in the AB model, the virtual model, and what it looks like.
But you didn't have any designations in there of
Well,
when we might go back to those.
Well, we didn't provide her with that information.
I thought that was, I know we
Can
didn't,
you
but
let Ms. Weiser speak?
it was, I just thought that we had something like that from what you had found when you were putting that together. Or you gave some examples in there.
There's been several iterations throughout this entire process, and it's not because we're trying to flip-flop and change our minds. And, you know, we've had people tell us you're being reactive, and we've had other people saying you're being overly proactive. And I wish the message, you know, could get out that this is new to everyone, and we're growing and evolving with it. And things that we knew last spring that we learned from changed when we got to the virtual. Things we learned there changed when we got to the AB. Things we learned to the AB, you know, informed our back to school. But one thing we tried to do, and we kind of had some debates around it, and I understand why, is we wanted data points, right? That's where we were last. Just give us some data points so that we don't have to have these long conversations. It doesn't have to be emotionally driven. It can be data driven. You know me, I love data. But then as we started looking at the data points and seeing our own context and our own community and hearing, you know, a lot of our staff members in our community and looking at our procedures and how they could work, and I'm answering your question in a long way, Beth, but we kind of evolved to let's do the virtual, and then we'll learn our procedures. We'll have our practices in place. We'll add half of our kids. It will allow us to socially distance. If we're successful, we'll add all of the kids. So I don't think, like Jen said, we ever kind of had that conversation we're having tonight. And I agree. I love the term lever on what levers need to be tripped. And right now, I think we're in that zone where it's hovering. We're hovering. We're ready. I know staff is anxious because they want to know. We want to know ahead of time what's happening. But a lot of us also feel we don't want to keep kids out of school to give that long-term predictability and then find out we didn't really need to. The whole thing is just it's just tough. So
It's very tough.
if you want to label those levers, let me know.
Can Mr. Sherman add something real fast?
I just think Beth is referring to a presentation you gave like 2 months ago that had the green, yellow, and
Oh.
red. And it was
Yeah, that's the AZDHS data. Yeah.
So I was just getting, I think I knew what she was talking about, so I was just trying to help.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm thinking that as far as a resolution for where we're at right now and what we can do, that maybe we can, obviously we're ready for a board meeting anytime you need one. But if we can start putting in writing some of these ideas of what would be the levers and maybe you can communicate those in an email to us, and then we'll all be on the same page and start that process of knowing when it's gonna be. You know, 'cause you do have a better idea than we do of what's happening in the district as a whole, and then individually breaking things out as to what's happening in each school.
Right.
That you'd know what levers are indications that we don't get in
Right.
this data.
And we can make that agreement, and I think everybody needs to understand there will never be consensus on this. And that, I think that's really difficult for all of us that want every staff member to feel protected and safe, and every family member to feel like, you know, they're protected and their kids to come to school. And I hope that message is heard by the community, that if we go to AB and everyone who wants the kids in school can understand why we went, and if we stay in school, while everybody who's preferring the AB understands why we made that decision, but we make it with all of the information. I think that's key, and I'm saying that if I were to see, I'm telling you this today, those cases per 100 go into the red zone, the percent positivity take a significant leap. Right now it's been well below that line. If it was to jump up into the 7, up to that 7+% again, then I think we have to go to an AB.
Would you prefer a directive from this board instead of you saying, well, I think if I see this, then I would, or if I think I see this, then I would? Would you prefer the board kind of do our job and provide you clear directive as to what we would think?
I would prefer a combination of collaborating. You having a defined directive and then us collaborating on are we there?
So we set the threshold, and then you provide the collaboration and conversation
And the context.
and the context to see for that.
Well, I think, and you're implying that the board, you said if the board do our job, I think we are doing our job.
I agree,
Like
but we've
Dr.
not
Dorner
provided.
said, it's a collaboration, we're working as a team, and
But
Dr.
we've not
Dorner is
provided
our
her those
Dr. Dorner
thresholds.
is our leader out
No,
there,
She's our superintendent.
and she's the leader of our district.
Sure, but
Absolutely.
she's just asked
And I'm not gonna
for,
micromanage her.
excuse me, she's just asked for clear directive. And then she said we would provide the context. So have we provided her the clear directive, is my question to the board.
Yeah, I believe we have,
I thought we
She's-
did that
yeah.
last meeting.
yeah. I mean, you've
Okay,
got.
so the board's
so-
clear. Are you clear about the directive, Superintendent Dorner?
Well, the way I understand it, the
What?
directive is to pay attention to the data, to work with my school administrators, to make it, to be ready for an AB or a virtual schedule should the data reach a point where we feel like that's the best place to go. What I don't know that we agree on as a board/superintendent collaborative team is when that is. And so I guess the question I hear you posing, and I appreciate the support, I truly do. And thank you, because it is something I take very seriously all day, every day. I love this staff, I love this community, I love these kids. But it is hard to nail down that when moment. It really is. And so, like I said last time, I would like you to be available so that I can say, I believe the data is there, and then to have that conversation with you. And I am fine if you also have input on what the there is. I know that sounds ambiguous, but to me, it has proven to be such a fluid situation, much more than we thought. I had moments where the first positive case came in, and your insides go, oh no, right? And then we see that it wasn't passed on, and it didn't happen, and then our system was working, and our staff wasn't positive, and you think, okay, you know, and I'm having a hard time explaining this to you, but it is such a fluid situation, and there is a point where we are going to need to go back to AB for the safety of the staff and students, and I don't want to cross that threshold at the wrong moment. But I think we have to look at it on a daily basis and maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure what you're looking for, but to me it is, if you go into that red zone, if we look on Thursday, and right now we've had at the most, where are we at, 50-ish cases per 100,000. If that jumps up above 100, there's no question we have no choice but to go to AB, period. If we get up to the 7%, 8% positivity again, there's no question we have to go to the AB, as much as everybody wants the kids in school. But we aren't there yet. So I would like to keep them in school as long as possible.
I agree.
And I think the bottom line is we're not going to AB in making that vote decision tonight.
No.
I think it's time we move on.
I agree with Bruce. Any other discussion?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item 22, which is to approve the several donations that we appreciate.
And I definitely would like to make that motion to approve all the donations with our very fond, appreciative gesture.
So that was a motion, and second looks like by Ms. Weiser.
I'll second that.
Second, Ms. Weiser. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
And I'll make that motion.
Motion and second, Ms. Young. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.